Hello, I have a message for Lindybeige from, my name is Sky. I don't have a challenge, it's me. Anyways, question for you, sir. Your knowledge, what you understand of history and the scan and scope of it, what do you think is the effect of orphans in the community, the society? Because I'm listening to your various videos and your commentaries on different things. Something that's kind of running through my mind is when you have the rise of cities, you have the rise of the orphan. And what's interesting about that is that so what's an orphan? It's like, well, nobody claims the child. The child can be of any age and it is vulnerable, at risk to whatever the elements. In a tribal society, the orphan is claimed by the tribe, or by the clan. The family, whatever relation, will claim the orphan of the child if one or both parents die, or like the protection of the child, that sort of thing. But when you look at the histories of Greek, Roman, Italian, and even Native American, whatever societies, it's people are when people are living by tribe, the they have this narrative, this commentary of who they are, how they live, how they exist, what the relationship is with the world, with the deities, etc. The afterlife, and the reason why you have this narrative is because that's identity. Your identity is woven into the DNA that you're born with from your parents, from their line, their lineage. That's how you establish, like, well, what is my life and what is the life of my children and the life of my parents, etc. Sort of, because as man becomes more sophisticated and understands time, they realize, like, well, what is today, what is tomorrow, what is the future, what is the past. It's and so by constructing those superstructures in the mind, it's like, well, where do I fit in that? And that's where the prime narrative, the biblical, mythological, legendary, whatever, of of your community, because community is related to technology. Like, so your understanding of what is important about everything is like, well, what is its importance? Like, how do I understand its importance? And if you have shamans roaming around saying, like, well, there's a god in everything, and so you have to understand the god. Like, okay, I can speak to the trees, so to speak, and like I can carve whatever I want out of wood. Using sharp stone, and like that's how man lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Just developed really sophisticated, like, well, this is what is around us. Like, okay, then the ice age hits again, and man is like, okay, we're getting pushed out. Like there's landscapes, whatever environments that were available now, there's less available, because like the sea level is rising, and so people are migrating and moving, and the changing of the ecosystems as well is just like forcing populations to relocate, from because they're hunter gatherer, like, so where are the animals going, how are the animals living, so the primitive Homo sapiens who are running around hunter gatherer, tent tribal, figuring out like everything they can about, like, just hunting animals, following, living, figuring out everything they can about survival. And okay, so where does fire come in? Like, all right, so that's where you start. Okay, well, I understand this about fire. You just fill in the gaps. So to get back to orphans, when you have cities, and so the rise of populations, the rise of like social services, in terms of like, okay, we have aqueducts bringing water, road networks bringing food and supplies. So now Rome becomes this major city, but also becomes this squalor mess of humanity. And uh, wherever you have a major city, yeah, you have beggars and orphans roaming around. So uh, what sort of yeah, because like their life is horrible, but they probably die like real quickly, but sadly. But what sort of, if you have the environments where you can have orphanages are encouraged and supported, that becomes the dominant society. Because why? Because people give to the charity. Why is the charity? Well, it's all related to, like, if I give, something good happens, and so we're taking care of the less fortunate of the community, of society. So it's the relationship of orphanages, that sort of elevate, I'm thinking, society, um, and it's when you include money in the equation that, like, okay, you can have whatever society, civilizations living with orphanages, and then when you allow currency to enter the environment, like, okay, now people can exploit the labor, based off of whatever. And so, anyways, yeah, Lindybeige, you're awesome. Keep up the good work.